I'm basically going to go through every player on the team. Like, not today, obviously, but today I'm going to do Pods and then TJD. And then from there, I'm going to just every day just do a new player and go through every player in depth and, leading into next season, kind of that sort of thing. Um, so I want to start with Pods. And by the way, like, I could throw clips up as well to kind of aid the like as visuals and stuff. So you guys let me know if like you guys want me to do that as well. Um, so with pods, right? I want to start with the strengths. So strengths being high level court vision. In summer league, like I think the biggest thing that stood out to me was Pod's ability to kind of put the ball on the floor and find guys, whether it be shooters, driving kick, even down low in the paint, dump off passes. Just his court vision is at a very high level. Coming in, he's only what 20 or was he 19 years old, I think. So he's still very young and developing, and his greatest strength, like I said, yeah, he's 20 years old. So his greatest strength is court vision coming into the NBA, and I think that's something we could build off of. We really haven't drafted a point guard of this type of mold necessarily in recent memory. And so his skill set's very unique. And I think Mike Dunleavy really did like what he can offer from that standpoint. And then on top of that, he's a very active rebounder. He's very active on the glass, has a high motor, a really good nose for the ball. So that those intangibles are things that you got to look at when you talk about adding value on the court. And then his ability to catch and shoot from the three, I think, was probably the biggest highlight of his college career because he shot, 44% on 9 attempts? Or no, on 6 attempts. So, I mean, that's a pretty significant mark right there. And so you look at that, and it's funny because in Summer League, he didn't really shoot the ball that well. And that was a major concern of, a lot of fans had. But it's not something that I necessarily put a lot of stock into because at the end of the day, like whether shots fall or not, I liked his ability to get shots off the ball, and then even on the ball, like just taking shots. There was a couple of plays where he was just stepping back and creating shots against uh, kind of mismatches. And I'll get into the weaknesses because there are some as well. But I just want to continue on the strengths. His defensive positioning is something that I thought was very surprising because he didn't come in uh, obviously to the draft as like a defender. And I'm not saying he was necessarily a clear positive, but he wasn't necessarily an obvious negative on the court either. Like he was holding his own, especially against wings. He did a pretty good job of just moving his feet, rotating on time. Really solid at closing out on shooters. Like I liked his defensive positioning overall, even though he's not necessarily gifted from an athleticism standpoint. And then I guess the last two things I'll note is his ability on and off the ball to to play just the game, and that's a big deal, right? Like somebody that you can put the ball in their hands and they can make something happen, but also they can play off of other great players, and whether it be catch and shoot or a stampede dribble where he catches the ball and is able to put the ball on the floor and make a decision. Like he has the ability to play on and off the ball, and I think that's a major positive, especially for a young player coming in. And then I think the last thing, and this is more of like a personality thing, but I think it's a big note, is that he's very unselfish. And you see a lot of players come into the NBA and they think about, like how can I impact the game, from a point standpoint or like necessarily like getting minutes to, have an imprint. And he just thinks about like the time I'm on the floor, how am I going to make others around me better? How am I going to have an impact on the game that may not be scoring? It could be other facets like playmaking, rebounding, and having a guy with that personality type. I think is an asset. It's an asset to a team because at the end of the day, you're not going to be the star player. You may not even be the 2, 3, or 4. But if you can slot in at that 7, 8, 9 spot down the line and be effective in that role, like that to me is something that could provide major value. And then we'll get to his weaknesses because there were definitely a lot of weaknesses Pod showed in summer league. One of which being shot creation. I think that was the biggest one. The fan base was pretty disappointed in his ability to just get shots off and in a comfortable way, whether it be on the perimeter or in the paint. He kind of struggled at times against length, just like rangy defenders who can kind of, put a hand in his face and make shots more difficult. He just needs to get more reps against those types of players. And I think with experience, he'll end up, more comfortable and he'll be able to counter and understand how to get to his spots better over time. I just think I'm not going to overreact to it, but there are people that have those concerns, and for good reason, because he wasn't necessarily, fluid when it came to just creating his own shot. So that's something that, you have to look at going forward. His foot speed overall, he wasn't necessarily slow, but at 6'4", like you would want him to be a little bit quicker. Like you don't, and a lot of guards, they're either quick or they're super skilled and they play at a slower pace. He's kind of in the second mold of like, a little bit slower, but he plays at a pace that's, very like he can kind of use his skill to his advantage, right? Get to his spots, use his body. He's like 200 pounds, so he has some good physical tools, even though he's not necessarily like very athletic from a speed or lateral standpoint. But he kind of moves in a way where he can kind of leverage his strength and positioning to get shots off, and I think that's something that he can look at to exploit other defenders down the line, and he can work on that part of his game as well. Even though it's a weakness, I think it's something he can use as a strength. I think I mentioned earlier about how he struggles against length, and that you kind of saw with his turnovers, where he would kind of throw these careless passes that weren't necessarily as crisp or as sharp as you'd like them to be, and that was something I pointed out during the games when we watched them live. Like, I felt as if he could have been more creative with how he kind of passed the ball, not necessarily throwing the same speed or the same, kind of maybe more no looks or better juice behind his passes to just keep the defense off balance, because I felt at times he became a little bit careless and it led to live ball turnovers, which led to, easy points in transition for the other team. And then I guess like the last weakness would be he's just undersized at the 2. Like he is 6'4", so he's just undersized at the two spot. But his skill set is good enough for him to play at the 1, especially as a playmaker. So even though he is kind of a combo guard in terms of his abilities, I do think he can end up playing both the 1 and the 2 down the line, but he's going to have to work on his strength at the 2 because he is undersized. So it's going to be interesting to see how he evolves, but ultimately, just to temper expectations with Pods, I don't expect Pods to be a guy that's going to be high minutes. He's not going to be a guy that's going to get a lot of run. He's I would view him as like PBJ, like last year. Like PBJ got spot minutes. There was a stretch of games where he got, 10, 15 minutes, but I just don't see Pods necessarily getting consistent run. I expect him to be sent to the G League, and he's going to spend a lot of time there just developing, getting his legs underneath him, playing, gaining experience and reps and playing against his peers, trying to get a feel for the system and things like that. I mean, he might have flashes like PBJ did, right? PBJ had his flashes, and Pods might have his flashes of his own. But I view him as more of like a year 2 type of prospect, where and I believe next season is the year we're going to see Pods, flourish and maybe carve out a role for him.
Hey
Because I
Dre, we
think,
got Bob Monroe in here.
oh, you do? Oh,
Is that
as a
as a viewer? I think as a
okay,
chat.
word. Oh, I see him. He said, oh yeah. And by the way, if you guys have any like comments or anything to add, like feel free, because I'm not the only you guys have observations too. So I'm gonna read some of the comments.
Dre, did you make a
Um,
PowerPoint?
I didn't. I wrote short
Uh-huh.
notes just to expand on them because I didn't want to forget anything. Um, and so okay, so Bob said he'll have to play the 2 because they already have Steph, CP3, and Joseph at the 1. Yeah, I think this season he'll probably be more of a 2 because of the positional the logjam at the 1, like you said. But I think down the line his skill set projects more as a 1. But the ideal scenario is he's a combo guard, so you can kind of slot him either or. Um, but yeah, any if you guys have any thoughts, Dr. NBA, do you have any thoughts about your observations from summer league or anybody any of the viewers? So I think I might need to watch him play more. We're doing CJ. We're doing pods. You want to come up on stage? I'd love to
Yeah, the
get
pod stand. Or he
your
runs the
insight.
Pods Music account, right?
Yeah, and so I'm gonna share um my screen in a little bit just to show some numbers and stuff from college so you can get an idea of what he did there. We'll get CJ up and he can kind of cook. What's up, CJ? How we doing?
How we doing?
Yeah, man. We're doing so today. I want to just cover pods and TJD.
Okay, so as y'all know, I'm Podmuse, so let me kind of just break some stuff down real quick.
Yep.
So
Feel free and go as long as you need to.
yeah, okay. So in college, I was watching some of his college clips today. One thing I noticed a lot, and you may have noticed this in summer league, but he's really patient. So when he has the ball, he'll kind of let defenders gravitate towards him, and I posted a clip today. There's one example of him where he got the ball, he drove, the defender in the paint came to him, and he found the open man in the paint for a layup. So he's really patient, and he's really smart with his passing. I think everybody talks about his shooting and his rebounding, but his passing, you can make an argument for that being his best strength. And his rebounding. So what he does, he finds the open lanes really well. So kind of like Derek White. Like Derek White's a really good rebounder, and he'll find the open lanes really well. And in pods, he does that really well too. And he's also really athletic. Like I know that may not make sense, but he jumps really high, and that's kind of something his dad said too. His dad says he said in his on the draft night interview when he got drafted that if Pods is told to jump, he'll jump as high as he can. So I thought that was really neat. And he's a really hard worker too. So I've seen him in the gym a lot as well. And at the draft combine, he was not missing shots at the draft combine either. I thought that was interesting. But yeah, he's a really good shooter as well. So as y'all know, he was a 44% 3-point shooter in college. He can shoot it from deep, like really deep. And a lot of his makes were pure switches too. So that's interesting. And I kind of just want to get this off real quick, but in college, he actually beat out Cam Whitmore in every single statistical category. I thought that was interesting. And another thing too is, he's really good at floaters. I think he might have one of the best floater games in all of everybody from the draft. I think he's probably a top 3 or 4 playmaker from everybody in the draft. I think he's definitely one of the better shooters. And another thing too is he's also a pretty good screener. So Steve Kerr's gonna like that as well.
Yeah, man. And like you said, in college, 44% on 6 attempts. He shot 48 overall from the field, and 77 at the line. 20 points per game, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals. He did average a couple turnovers, but very efficient. Like, what was his effective? Probably based on what I'm seeing is probably really high 50s, low 60s. Like, super efficient. Obviously, in summer league, he had his struggles, but I think that comes with being 20 years old. And what are your thoughts on his weaknesses and things that he needs to improve on? maybe not next season, but just overall going forward for his career.
So weaknesses, I think we saw in summer league that defensively, it is kind of difficult for him to contain a quick first step. But there are some things I like there, like he's pretty active and he can get deflections and disrupt the offense. Another weakness is I think he does need to get a little bit stronger and adapt to the physicality and length of the league. So I think you kind of saw him in summer league struggle a little bit shooting. I think he was trying to get used to that physicality and length, and I think it did throw him off a bit there. Another weakness, again, defensively, he is pretty poor at like interior defense. If most people, if they get him in the paint, they'll just score right over him, which is fine. I mean, he's 6'4", so that's just gonna happen. But really, like for us, he's a perfect system fit. So it's not like Cam Whitmore where he was just not gonna be a great system fit. Paz is a really good system fit. So for us, like a lot of his weaknesses, they'll kind of be mitigated if that makes any sense. Especially like if he's out there like playing with Draymond or even TJD, like that, those defensive problems, they really won't be as prevalent. So I also think so he's a really good playmaker, but he also does turn the ball over a little bit. So I think there are multiple 5-6 turnover games in summer league, and in a Steve Kerr type offense, you're just going to get at least 2 turnovers a game if you're getting the ball a lot and having a high usage. You're going to have at least 2 to 3 turnovers a game, like you see with Steph. He'll have 6 turnover games because that's just how the offense is. So I think he does need to tighten that up a little bit. I think he needs to maybe be a little bit sharper with his passes.
Yes.
But I think most of his weaknesses can be covered up with how we play and the players that we have. So I'm not really too worried about that.
I agree. What's up? No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say though, like, I couldn't really watch all the summer league games, but just based on hearing from what people have said, I think a lot of people are just not happy that, like, just having seen how he performed and how Cam Whitmore performed, people aren't really happy that we drafted him just because, like, just going off of the weaknesses, right? Just because he's not an athletic guard, nor is he that fast. And there was a lot of concern I heard about because of his lack of speed and first step, right? It's hard for him to get his shots up, which is why people explained the reasoning as to why he struggled shooting in summer league, right? And also his free throw is kind of sus too, because I remember I watched a few games on here with you when you were doing like the live watches, and like we were laughing that he could never make 2 consecutive free throws in a row, right? And for being a so-called pure shooter, right? For being supposedly a good shooter, I think I don't know exactly what his percentage was,
so
but
in college it was about 78% in college, which is actually pretty good.
Yeah, but I feel like if you're a pure shooter, you should shoot above 80%, but that's just me. So yeah, that's just what I think, right? Not athletic, which you talk about the system fit, but like we already lack athleticism on this team. Yeah, so I think that's kind of the main thing that I see. Just like the Santa Clara stuff, right? Like obviously he had a breakout season there his sophomore year, and he didn't do too well in Illinois, but like it's obviously a different conference, different competition, and stuff like that. So we'll see. I mean, I'm not going to make assumptions off or judge him and his potential based off of summer league, right? We got to see what he's going to be able to do on the NBA floor with actual competition. But the reality is, right, I don't think that he'll get consistent minutes next season. I think, like Dre said, he'll probably be sent up to the G League, and if he breaks out there, then he'll probably get some opportunity down here in San Francisco. But yeah, that's just my preliminary thoughts.
So you talked about Illinois. What I will say is Illinois, they didn't really play him much, and in the limited time he did play, he was okay. So the reason why he transferred to Santa Clara is because he wanted to be the lead guard, and Santa Clara is one of the schools that offered him that. So he went there, and I think Jalen Williams, the OKC player who went to Santa Clara had an impact on that decision too. And Jay Frey, shout out to Jay Frey, by the way, he asked me in the chat about the competition there. So there's really two. So they played in the West Coast Conference. There's really like two good teams there, and that's I think St. Mary's and Gonzaga. Y'all have heard of Gonzaga for sure. But the competition there is not that great. And in the games that he played against higher level competition, he wasn't great. But I've looked back at the film, and I think most of those games he was just really getting keyed in on. The defense and the game plan was keyed on him. So it's kind of difficult, especially when you don't have great talent like teams like Gonzaga do. Like Gonzaga, they have a lot of great talent. They always produce NBA talent. So when you're Santa Clara, a really small school, and you really only have a few good players, it's kind of really hard for Pods in that situation to have good games against teams that are kind of keying in on him. But he really didn't play that many, I would say, elite teams, just kind of based off the conference he played in. But there are some games where against some solid teams and some solid opponents where he kind of did break out and have some really good games. So I'll try and put one of them in the chat maybe later. But yeah, the competition, that is a little bit of a concern. But and another thing, the free throws too. I think he did get better as summer league went on from the free throw line. I think he ended 3 for 3 in his last game from the free throw line. So, and he was 78% in college. So, it's not really a big worry to me.
Yeah, shooting wise, I think a lot of what shooting is confidence, right? And small sample size, right? He only played a handful of summer league games, so I'm not going to put a ton of stock into it, but it is interesting that he came into the draft as known as a shooter, and like that was the one thing he struggled with from at the free throw line and at the 3-point line. But what I will say is it was a pleasant surprise that he was as well rounded as he is, and he was a much better defender than we had thought, right? Positionally and in terms of just discipline, rotation wise, he was usually in the right spots. And rebounding basketball was something he averaged like a handful of rebounds, 4 or 5 rebounds a game, which is pretty good at his size. And then his playmaking, I think he's arguably, I mean, in summer league, I didn't watch a ton of games across the league, but I did watch enough to conclude I think Pods was probably a top 3 or top 5 playmaker in summer league. Like
Top 3.
Yeah, like obviously you got the Thompson twins, but he was right there. I mean, his ability to just find guys in a variety of ways, whether it be drive and kick, dump offs to bigs, simple like fundamental reads, right? And I loved his pace and I loved his patience. Very under control, very tempered. You remember that clutch shot, I think, against Dallas where he kind of penetrated the defense, got to the lane, dribble, drive, kick out to an open shooter. He took his time. Like, he didn't really rush it, and it was an on-point read, an on-point pass. So his passing accuracy, his court vision, and just overall his ability to make others around him better is just something that is a real asset, and I think he can build on going forward because at his frame, 6'3", 6'4", at 200 pounds, I mean, there's something there you can work with, right? I mean, you look at Jalen Brunson, I think he was used much as a comparison, and I know B kind of referenced him. B, you want to expand on that comparison, what you see between Brunson and Pods?
Yeah. Between Pods and Brunson was a lot more. I think Brunson wasn't the playmaker that Pods was, but I think with Brunson when he came out of college, he was much more of a scorer. But he played at Villanova, went to a good college, and he had the fundamentals down. That's why he won the Wooden Award at college. But the thing with Brunson and Pods, why I say that's a fair comparison is because I think for Pods to be a player in the NBA, just like Brunson was, he'd have to gain weight. He'd have to gain like muscle in a good way, not like bad weight, but good
Yes.
weight. He'd have to, because he's not gonna outspeed anybody in the NBA. He's not gonna beat anybody with crazy handles. What he's gonna have to do is become more crafty. He's gonna have to beat dudes, throw himself into dudes, draw fouls. It's the stuff that like guys like Chris Paul. I see Brunson do it. It's not just exclusive to Brunson, but he's gonna have to get bigger and stronger. He's gonna have to get bigger and stronger. He's gonna like survive, and it will help him also defensively as well. Because a lot of people say that, oh, Brunson's a bad defender. Brunson's a bad defender. He's a bad defender because he's 5'11". But if you actually watch him, he's not. He gives effort on that end. You could tell he gives effort.
Right.
So here's the thing with Pods defensively too, that's kind of overlooked. Like Dante, he's really good off-ball defensively. So there's a play he made in that Lakers Summer League game. He made an excellent gap and recovery to the corner, and things like that. And he can get deflections and steals off ball too. He's really active and disruptive. So on-ball defense is a little bit of a concern, but off-ball defense I think is a strength.
Yeah, but one thing that I'll say too, in regards to Brunson is I think the reason why he's so effective near the rim is because of his elite footwork, and I think that if Pods is gonna be even anywhere near Brunson as a player, I think he's got to work on that, and his obviously getting stronger and stuff, being able to handle the physicality. But the not being able to finish at the rim is really concerning, considering that we have so many players on this team who can't do that either.
Guys' thoughts on just what do you view him as? And for me personally, I kind of alluded to this earlier, but I view him more as a year 2 type of player. Just I think he's going to get a lot of time in the G League just because of the congestion at the 1 and the 2 this year. But do you guys view him more as like a year 2 type of player? And do you think he'll be like a long-term prospect, or do you think he'll be a guy like I don't want to say Jacob Evans or anything, but a guy that we kind of move off of in a couple of years, where like maybe I don't think he'll end up like Jacob Evans in terms of career-wise.
He has an NBA skill. Jacob Evans has 0 NBA skill.
No, yeah. I'm saying more so like, do you view him as like a long-term fit for the Warriors, or do you view him as a guy that is more or less could be lost in the shuffle to where we may move off of him sooner than later? Like, kind of, how do you see his prognosis? Like, kind of, how do you see that happening? Like, going through?
Yeah, I'll go. Can I go first real quick?
You go.
Yeah, okay. So, to your point about a year 2 thing, yeah, I think I think he'll get a lot more playing time in year 2. But you know how PBJ had a stretch in like late February, early March, where he was getting. Cause I think that might happen to Pod sometime this year too. CP3, he's 39, Steph's 36, about to be 36. So there may be points in the season where either Orr's missing games or they're both missing games, and Pods gets into the rotation there. And I do think he'll be in the G League most of the year, and I think he'll be getting a lot more run in year 2. But I do think he is a long-term prospect because he is such a great system fit, and he does a lot of things really well that Steve Kerr likes. And I think one thing that should stick is his rebounding and shooting for sure. Like those 2 things, I think should stick, and those bring value to this team. So I think he is kind of a long-term prospect, and I think he'll be here for at least 4, maybe more years, unless he gets traded for a big fish.
What are your thoughts, B, on that?
Yeah, I think he's going to be here for a multiple amount of years. I don't think it's a 1-year thing. I do think he could get some run this year. Back end of the season, maybe, if we have like a good enough record or we're like a secure top 3 seed, which I don't see out west. I think it's going to be a competition down to like the last 5 games for like the 3rd seed. But for like comfortably out west, like a top 3 seed, then I can see him getting some late run at the end of the season. Like how they did in 2022 when they gave like guys like Moody and Kuminga some burn before the playoffs.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I can see something like that happening from this year, but no, I think he's a player who's going to be here long term. I think he has an NBA skill. He has a skill where it's like the passing, the playmaking, if the shot comes along, the shooting.
So I love what you said. I love all the contributions, like, because you guys have said things that I didn't even think of. All right, so I'm gonna share something. This is so I kind of just had my own little like, oh, okay, like what's realistic for, and I'll get to TJD down the line, but what's realistic for Pods next year from a uh production standpoint, right? Like in terms of points, rebounds, assists, efficiency, all that. So you guys can take a look. So I had him around 7 minutes a game, 4 points, about 2.5 rebounds, couple of assists. And then I didn't think he's gonna shoot 48 from the field like he did in
Yeah,
college. Yeah.
that's a low 3-point percentage that you have.
What's up?
I said that's a low 3-point percentage that you have at 37%.
Doctor NBA, what's your background? It's crazy.
Oh,
Bros
sorry.
in the club.
No, you good. You good. No, yeah, I don't see him like averaging 48 from the field like he did in college because and we kind of saw in summer league he struggled against length and bigger wings and things like that. But I do think he's going to be low 40s from the field, 30, 36, 37 from three, and about mid 70s from the line. So that's kind of my projection. You guys have any thoughts on kind of these numbers, or do you think more or less, better efficiency, worse? Like, what do you think? Or this is about right? You think?
Yeah, I think
This is pretty fair.
the 3-point percentage I like a lot. Maybe the steals per game a little bit higher. He averaged about 2 steals a game in college, so maybe like 0.7, maybe like barely higher.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with that mostly.
Wow, you toned down the expectations quite a bit
Who did?
for him, which I think which I
What
think is fair. I think it's fair though, in
Oh,
terms
no,
of
no, yeah, I
the
don't think
numbers you put.
Yeah, because it's kind of like PBJ. He'll get some run, he'll have some flashes, but I don't think he's a year one guy. I just think
No,
because
Yeah.
all that
I
stuff.
think an
All right,
underrated factor that nobody's bringing up is that he's going to be sitting behind Steph Curry and Chris Paul for a year.
yeah, and
So
that's gonna help him.
Chris Paul's the perfect player, to be honest with
So
you. Chris
you
Paul's
know
the
how a
perfect
campaign
player.
was kind of like the laughing face of the league in terms of
Yeah.
always being on
Oh,
3-win
yeah.
teams, but then he
I
goes
like
to
that.
Phoenix and he was actually a legit backup point guard. And
Oh.
I will say this: he averaged, I think he put up 28 points in that game 2 versus the Clippers in the conference finals.
Yeah.
So that's I think Chris Paul definitely helped him out a lot there in Phoenix.
You
And I
you
think
made a good point
he
from a
can do the same with
cerebral.
Pods.
Yeah, from a cerebral standpoint, you're right. Being around those guys can, elevate how he views the game, how he thinks the game, and it'll accelerate that learning process, that learning curve. That I think, for me personally, I think his learning curve is going to be steeper than TJD, who I want to move on next to. So that was a really good rundown with Pods, by the way. I loved everything that was said. So with TJD, I'll just kind of give my thoughts, and then you guys can share whatever you think or whatever. So TJD, I said his strengths are that he has great hands. He's a vertical spacer. His defensive awareness and anticipation is something that stuck out to me during summer league. Just his ability to kind of play two in the pick and roll, move his feet really well. Doesn't overhelp, especially he's able to kind of um, you know hedge towards the guard and then recover to the big, play that cat and mouse game, so to speak. So there's that, and then he has high level timing. He reminds me. I know I made the Onyeka Okongwu reference earlier, but he also kind of gives me some Robert Williams, just kind of vibes because his timing is, especially on blocks, very good. His second jump is really good. That helps him with offensive glass, just his ability to jump off of misses and crash the boards. He's a really good roll man, and he's a really good diver. That stuck out to me as well, just his ability to kind of just cut down the middle, catch the ball, and finish. So, and like I said, his timing, unique. His playmaking is not only a positive and an asset, but it's unique for his position. And his playmaking chops, we saw the very first play was a wraparound pass around two players for an easy layup. His playmaking is something that I think is something we can unlock, especially in our system. And then and just like Pods, and I think this is something worth noting, he's unselfish. And I think the reason I say unselfish as just, even though it's a personality and intangible characteristic. It's not something that necessarily is going to be on the stat sheet. It matters in terms of fitting guys into the system because, like I said, you're not going to be the starting center. You're not going to be, the star on the team. So how do you find a way to be effective? You have to have the right personality type to embrace a lesser role and be a star at that role. Kind of like what Shadow says a lot. And then his weaknesses, didn't have too many, but I said, finishing with his right hand, with the offhand, right? Just something that he's not as comfortable with. He's not a perimeter threat, so he's not going to space like horizontally. He's not going to space you horizontally and hit mid-range or three-point shots for that matter. And then he is a little undersized for his position at 6'9". But I also view the undersized thing as an asset. Like, that's also, you can argue because of speed, right? He's undersized, but he has some speed. So it can help and it can hurt. If he's able to kind of manage that and toe that line where he can leverage his undersized nature at his position and turn it into an asset, which I saw flashes of, then I think that to me is going to go a long way. Kind of like how Draymond has. And I think being next to Draymond and Loon is going to do wonders for him as well. And then I'll get to expectations later. But anyone has any other contributing, thoughts on? Last thing, his ability to switch on the perimeter. He showed flashes of, and that was something worth noting as well because he was able to just step out on guards and kind of move his feet pretty well, hold his own. And obviously, it's not something you want him to do consistently, but it's something that he's shown the ability to do. Anyways,
This guy said De'Aaron Fox was a genre, right?
So,
Yeah.
what are your guys' thoughts on TJ?
Dre just ignored Sam. Wait, I have a question, Dre. Who would you say is a comp for him in the NBA right now?
I think he's like a hybrid between Rob Will and I think Rob Will might be the best one because even though Okongwu has a similar frame, Rob Will's timing and exactly Craystan nailed it on the head. Rob Will can pass, like very strikingly similar skill sets. If you really do a deep dive into what they can do, I would say Rob Will. He's a vertical threat as well. TJD's a vertical threat. So very similar, very good at diving. Defensively, they're both really good, and they crash the offensive boards pretty well. So those are some. I think that would be a solid comp. Anyways, Lindell. I know Lindell has a lot to say, and so does a few other.
You said TJD, Lindell will appear.
Yeah. Lindell, you have any thoughts?
I saw it on the timeline, and I was like, "Oh shit, let me."
Yeah.
Because I'm redoing my setup in the office here, so I was like, "Oh, I gotta go plug some shit in and get up there." Now, honestly, I heard a portion of what you had been saying for probably like 5-7 minutes, and it echoes a lot of why I was excited for him in the first place pre-draft, and it was really cool because we haven't really gone back and talked about him a ton. I feel like post summer league, but it was wild to see in 4 games that he played in, to see the stuff that we were excited about be confirmed like game after game after game, to the point where, based on where he is right now, I can start to get excited about some other things. One of which you mentioned, and that's like switchability around the perimeter. If I were to have one like luxury item, like if he's already advanced as far as anticipation goes, if he's already advanced when it comes to playmaking at his size, if he's already advanced as his spacing, his role spacing and stuff like that, if he's already like, and I would even say like rotating defensively, if I'm going to pick one thing that maybe we didn't expect, it's kind of like a luxury. If he can show the ability to fight through screens or even like switch on the perimeter, it's going to be really, really difficult to keep him off the floor. Like really, really difficult to keep him off the floor. So I'm excited about him. But yeah, you covered the vast majority of what I'm excited about for him. I know you're going to get into a little bit more detailed stuff here in a minute. But yeah, it was cool to see in the few games that he had in summer league, the things that we were excited about be confirmed, and even show us some things that we weren't expecting.
And you brought up a really good point about the switching thing. If he can get out there and switch like consistently, effectively,
brother, he's a problem.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
he's like
that's
I think the general consensus that he's already a good fit for what we do and what we need at his position. If he shows that he can do that like
it'd
today,
be huge. It'd be
bro.
huge.
Yeah, yeah,
And the thing is,
yeah.
so he did that a little bit in college. And what he would do is he would kind of let the guy get by him and then just recover and block the shot. I think
Right.
we covered that in some highlights early on in the month. Um, but in summer league he did. I think at times, I think they had him in drop coverage most of the time in summer league. I
Hmm.
could be wrong. And I think he switched out a couple times, but he isn't as quick to stay in front of his man consistently. But he is able to chase down and get blocks pretty effectively, like he did in college.
Yeah,
So
he walks that like driver in better than and again he has to because he's undersized and he's I would say his anticipation makes up for what he lacks in like pure quickness. But that first, you notice he walks guys in that are driving to the basket better than I think anybody in this class, and it really sets up his shot contest really really well. If he again, and that's part of switching, right? That's what you do after the switch. Now, surviving a breakdown is totally different, right? Because Looney, I don't understand how he does it. He survives breakdowns from some of the best in the league. Luka Doncic, James Harden. You know what I'm saying? Like he's
Right.
consistently out. I wouldn't say consistently as far as like a high percentage goes, but when he's out there on that guy as your quote unquote like the offense's best option to take advantage of, like if that's who you're choosing to be your quote unquote mismatch, for most other teams the big is, but with Looney he's just not that. If Trayce can show a little bit of the ability to walk guys in and funnel them to whoever that other guy is, because oftentimes it's Draymond, right? Oftentimes it's Draymond. Sometimes it will be for him. It will be a little bit of Wiggins. We'll see. But if he shows he can do that and kind of like live to fight another day on some of those breakdowns, holy hell! Like again, that to me that's a luxury. I'm not gonna rely on him to do that consistently. But the fact that he's in the few games that he did have confirmed the things that we were excited about and give us a little bit of like a sneak peek of what he can do in the perimeter is pretty crazy.
And I will
Pretty
point
crazy.
out, right, he did go 57th, and he is 23 years old. Like his age is partly why he dropped so far. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people had him as a late first, right?
Well, that's not even true though, Dre, right? Because he was expected to go late first, high second,
right?
and then obviously he turned down teams to sign with the Warriors.
Yeah,
So
yeah, of course, yeah. But I'm just saying that like his age, like as a general rule of thumb, teams usually avoid older prospects because they don't have as much potential. Theoretically, like the idea is they're older, so their ceiling isn't as high.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that to be the case with him.
A lot of it's dying. That feeling older player thing is probably
Well,
dying out
so
recently.
so here's the thing with me, right? Because at least as far as older players, because Dre, you kind of touched upon his very weak right hand, and that was on the offensive side, and his right hand needs a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I would argue finishing in general, it needs a good amount of work. Using the backboard and contested shots, etc. But the really limited thing to me is like he's very, very, very left hand dominant, and
Yeah.
that includes blocking shots. Like he's very hesitant to block shots with his right, and also just alter shots. Like he'll naturally try to contest or block a shot with his left hand where he should use his right hand. And that's kind of where that age factor comes in, right? Like he's 23. Like how much can you really coach that habit out of him? You know, and I wouldn't expect that to be coached out of him, over this summer. Maybe if best case scenario is like 6 months, right? Like halfway through the season, towards the latter half of the season, but most likely, next season. So I think that, really limits his ability to contribute on the floor. Now, with that being said, I do think he'll still get minutes because one other thing that I think you didn't necessarily touch on was he's actually a very good contested rebound getter. He will kind of fly through people in the mud. He'll box out and he'll get his timing right after a box out, unlike James Wiseman, to get those rebounds, right? He does both of those very well. And a lot of times it does lead to, that's partially the reason you see guards, right, with high rebound numbers is because he was doing the dirty work. But I do think the left hand thing is a very limiting factor, and I'm very interested to see how that will develop over the course of this next season.
Sun God, I think you have legitimate reason to kind of like curb your expectations because of that. I will have to probably, because if you're right-handed, and there are guys who can contest shots effectively with both hands. The reality is you're gonna, and you brought up a great point as far as the age being a factor to like if he's been good enough contesting shots, 80-85% of the time with his left hand, he's going to keep doing it. I'm not worried about that because I do think that that's a legitimate observation. I'm not as much worried about it because of the thing that makes his shot blocking so encouraging to me, and that's the anticipation. Like his just timing and IQ on defense speak to me that, and maybe it's a coaching thing, maybe it's just like this is a habit that you're going to have to build because the elite players in this league can change the shot attempt at the last minute, so you're going to need to learn how to change your block attempt at the last minute. I see that. I'm 100%.
Exactly.
It's the anticipation that's so elite that kind of like, to me, it kind of curbs that like concern a little bit for me.
He jumps after the ball goes up.
Literally, there are very few players I've seen who are as good at lulling a potential bucket getter into a false sense of confidence. Like he's one of the best. Now, one of the reasons why one of the reasons why I'm not, and I said this pre-draft, offensive side, that's 100%. He's almost like allergic to using his right hand. And
he is. He
is. Like I've seen it. Like I watched it happen. I've watched a lot of TJD at this point. He's almost allergic to it. But again, I can live with that because I think my expectation for him late year 2, year 3 is to be an athletic loony. And if you really think about who that is an elite role player, like an elite role player. And there are things that we wish Looney gave us that he doesn't give us. So like I'll give you an example. If Trayce could finish around the basket with both hands, he would have gone in the teens. You know what I'm saying? Like the low teens, like 12, like 13, 14, 15.
No question.
You know what I'm saying? So those are legitimate observations. I'm okay with those because of what he shows me he can do at an elite level already.
Yeah, no, and like I totally agree. I do think a lot of this stuff, it's more like a warning sign of like I'm just interested to see how that'll develop.
I'll be watching them very closely. I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
I just want.
Yeah,
go ahead. No, you're good.
No. I was just gonna say, like, yeah, that point about what you mentioned about the NBA players. That's the reason why I wanted to highlight that because I do think like NBA players, like the James Hardens of the world, will take advantage of that.
There's nobody better, I think, at the position they play than Looney. I just don't think there is. It's crazy.
Just to read off his, obviously we just listed a bunch of nuanced observations, but just his pure like production in college, 21, and this was his senior year, 21 points per game, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, and 3 blocks. A few turnovers, but that comes with the territory. He was one of the most. Didn't they play through him? Him and Hood Schifino, right? They play together.
Yes.
But he was a focal point, yeah. And he shot 58 from the field, 70 at the line. So, his numbers are really good, you know.
And also the fouls. Look at the fouls.
Good point. Right. Less than 2.
When blocks and rebounds go up and fouls go down, that's a very, very and not just fouls too, like overall usage. I would love to see his usage rate from his freshman year to his senior year. When you see the stats that we want to see, right? And again, he peaked at 2 fouls a game, which is kind of ridiculous for the position he played for his entire career. But free throw percentage does nothing but go up. Well, 68%. But attempts to percentage, 70%. Right. Rebounds goes up. Steals barely. Blocks goes up.
Yep.
Damn near doubles, right? From his sophomore year to his senior year. When those all go up and your fouls go down, fam, bruh. Those are pretty good indicators that you're getting more and more disciplined as your collegiate career goes on. It's why I said during summer league, y'all heard me in the playback. I was like, I need him around NBA talent right now.
And this doesn't show it, but I think his box plus minus was number 1 in the entire nation.
It was.
Yeah. So that is probably the most important stat right there.
Yeah. Meanwhile, averaging 21 points and
21 point double.
Yeah.
So I want to move on expectations. So we spoke about Pod's expectations with TJD. I actually have different expectations for him. So my expectations for him is that he'll be an immediate contributor, who can play some spot minutes in the second unit next to CP. From what I saw in summer league and kind of the film, and given that he's a 4-year college player, I do think I think he projects as a rookie to be able to defend at an NBA level, right? He projects as that just based on what we've seen, and his age and his experience, I think. And also he is a perfect system fit at the front court spot, a guy that can pass and finish around the rim and defend at a high level. That is a perfect big for Steve Kerr, you know. And the playmaking thing is something to keep tabs on, because that may determine his ceiling as a player. Because if he ends up, averaging 5, 6, 7 assists a night down the line, which isn't out of the, realm of possibility given that he averaged 4 his senior year, and he's already shown playmaking chops in summer league, and the flashes are there, the ability's there, and the feel is there. He'll be a major problem if he can defend, rebound, playmake, and finish around the basket. And then we haven't even mentioned, developing a jumper, but that's down the line. But what are your guys' expectations for next year overall? I kind of view him as like a backup big who will get about, certain chunk of time next to CP, and I think he can contribute right away. I don't think we'll be holding our breath when he's on the court.
And another thing too, I do expect Steve Kerr to play him. The reason why I say that is Steve Kerr, he does like his experienced college players. I think Anthony Lamb went to college for 4 years. He was like a 1 or 2 year NBA vet, so it's not like he's a 10-year vet. And he was getting consistent 20 minutes a game, So I think TJD should be able to play right away, and I think Steve Kerr will like him and put him on the floor a lot. My expectation for him is to be a really strong backup, maybe third-string center, and be really impactful in the time that he is on the floor.
Yeah. Oh, good.
No, you're good. I just want to say I agree.
Yeah, at least to me, I know preseason doesn't mean much, but I do think preseason will be an indicator of how soon he'll get on the court. I don't think he'll get on the court probably until mid-November, late November at the earliest. But I do think, depending on how he does in the preseason, that could, move up to as early as, third week, second week of the season. Just because I have a hard time seeing that, in terms of minutes, right, that I don't think we'll be seeing too many lineups without Looney or Draymond. One of them off the court, or sorry, one of them not being on the court. And so that kind of leaves that other big position of is that going to be TJD or Sarge, right? And I expect that to be mostly Sarge. So it'll be a combo of Sarge and Draymond, or Sarge and Looney, or Draymond Looney together. So that's where I kind of don't see the minutes adding up necessarily. He might be used in terms of like if there's foul trouble early, which is very likely. But yeah, other than that, like I don't necessarily see him being a staple in any sort of rotation, at least to start out the season. And maybe, if he does well enough towards the back half of the season, he can carve out a role for himself. But yeah, right now I'm really just expecting him to be like a foul trouble big, or like somebody's injured and filling in minutes, that type of big.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a very plausible outcome. I think it's interesting. I have a feeling Steve had a lot to do with this pick. So I'm a little bit more on the like liberal side in terms of I think he'll play a little bit more than so Wiseman played about 12 minutes last year. He played like 12 and a half per game. And so 12 and a half, you're like, okay, that's not too much, but that's also not nothing. I think we can see TJD on the higher end around 12 minutes. I think realistically he can, anywhere from like 9 to 10, I think is possible because at the end of the day, I do think Steve is going to throw him into the fire at some point, and I think he's going to get some degree of consistent run. And 12 might be too much. It might be, but I was more so of the mindset that he can kind of fit the system right away, and I think he can be instant impact. So with those two, because it's one thing if he could fit the system, but still has to, develop certain tools or has to learn the game. But he's a 4-year college player. He's built to be a warrior from a personality and also a play style standpoint. So, anywhere from like 9, 12 minutes, I could see, and then I said, this is my official projection. I kind of just brainstormed some numbers. So about 5 points per game, 3 rebounds, about an assist and a half, a steal and a block, 58 from the field, 68 from the line. So, second, probably like a third string big, but right now we don't really have a backup big. So Saric, I guess, could be the backup 5-4 sort of, but there might be times where Saric isn't athletic enough to match up with the opposition, or Saric, like you said, foul trouble, and you may see TJD getting 10 minutes on a night. You know what I'm saying? So these things, I think he's good enough to where you don't, like I said, have to hold your breath if he's out there, and you can kind of ride his minutes because he's NBA ready, in my opinion. So yeah, I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on like?
I will disagree on your point about at least the Wiseman minutes because I do think that 12 is inflated very heavily from the first 10 games of the season, right?
And the back-to-backs.
Yeah, and the back-to-back. So, I think realistically, because he basically got play in those first 10 and the back-to-backs, and he didn't get any play in any of the other games. So I think 12 is on the higher end as far as minutes. But yeah, everything else I agree with.
Actually,
You are right, and you make a fair point. Wiseman, his minutes were front loaded because they
right.
threw him out there with the hockey substitutions, and he was out there.
Yeah, bro. Them dishonest ass lineups and minutes.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So that's what. Yeah, no, that's a fair point. And it wasn't 12. It wasn't like 12 minutes every night, like consistent 12. It was more so like 21 or 22 minutes one night, and then the next night he got like 5, and then it would average out to like 13 or 12 or whatever. So yeah, you're right. I think with TJD, just in a vacuum, I think 10 minutes is like plus or minus 2. Like he may be around 8, he may be around 12, but I think 10 minutes is kind of like the that breaking point of like, okay, he'll get somewhere around that.
Gosh, I would love 10 minutes for him if it was earlier, if it starts earlier in the season and not just because somebody gets hurt or somebody gets in foul trouble. And I know I know it's difficult to work somebody brand new in to a consistent 10 minutes from day one, but I don't know. I might be wrong. Like, I'm super open to being wrong. I really am. And I've said to the playback before, like, there's a different kind of, I think, nervousness because this is the first guy ever that I've watched beforehand and been like, I want the Warriors to draft this dude, and it wound up happening. But I'm open to being wrong too. I'm not gonna bullshit. But like, if this dude can get 10 minutes, I think that number goes up. I think the second he gets 10 consistent minutes, and by second I mean, like, say he goes like 5 games in a row, getting minimum 10 minutes. I think he demands 16, 17 minutes. I genuinely believe that he can be the kind of guy that can share the floor with Sarge. Because that's kind of where I'm thinking. Yeah, bro. Like a guy who can play make from a veteran standpoint, stretch the floor a little bit, and put him in a position. Because again, think Chris Paul, Moody,
Kuminga and Sarge.
Kuminga, Sarge, TJD. Right. You've got 2 dudes out there. You got your point of attack guy, right? Theoretically, you got a guy who's gonna stretch the floor and knock down shots in Moody. You've got the wily vet in Chris Paul. Like, we know who Chris Paul is in the pick and roll. We know how he can, orchestrate things on the offensive and defensive side. And you've got Sarge who can play, make, stretch the floor, do that kind of stuff. It allows Trayce to really finish plays. Like, there's a lot of stuff to be excited about. I legitimately just want him to rotate well on the defensive end, and on the offensive end, just finish plays. Because if he's on the floor with the people I think he's going to share the floor with, that's all he's going to be asked to do. Rebound, rotate, nowhere to be on defense, and just dunk and lay up the ball. You know what I'm saying? So I'm optimistic, but when I say I have no idea what lineups are going to look like, bruh, I don't even know where to begin. So we'll see. I'm excited for him, but we'll see.
And to add to the fit with Chris Paul, he in the 2 summer league games, he showed he was a tremendously good screen setter, which is huge for Chris Paul.
A screen setter, and
good point.
And I caught myself sounding like a lunatic because this is the kind of stuff that we watch now. I think kind of as a result of how this thing has kind of developed over time, from Spaces to Playback and really just fans of the Warriors in general. Bro, have y'all seen his roll timing and spacing is A1.
I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't be surprised if they put him out there with Chris Paul in training camp, and him and Chris Paul build a rapport, and Chris Paul asks Steve Kerr to give him minutes. I would not be surprised.
Bro, his
the perfect type of player.
Roll timing is elite, bro. How he rolls off, and the angle at which he does it, and the timing at which he does it. Literally, so when you hear me say I need him around NBA talent, it's for both the things that I believe he's good at and the things that I want to see him challenged in. Because it was 2 games and I was like, all right, I'm done. It no longer, to me, it's not even about development, because the things that I wanted to see, I've seen. Put him around NBA players. I was done 2 games into the summer league, bro, because it doesn't even help him to be around that group. It doesn't, like, that's where I believe Trayce is right now. It doesn't even help him to continue to be around G League players anymore.
And I just want to say this real quick. So Dre has him at 57.8% from the field. I think most of his points are going to come off lobs from CP. So I'd actually have like that, maybe 2 percentage points higher. Just because I think, most of his points will come off lobs and him being in the dunker spot. But that's just my opinion.
How many games did he play? He played at least 3, right? He Trayce in the summer league. Didn't he play 3?
Oh no, he played. Yeah, he played 2. Yeah.
2.
I think one of them he was like 18 points, 10 rebounds.
Yeah.
A couple of assists.
8 offensive.
8 offensive. Yeah, and then the other game he was like 12 points, 7 rebounds, like a few steals, like a few assists, whatever. But by the way, these projections for that I kind of came up with, these are like mostly conservative. Like I don't, because here's the thing. I'd rather be on the lower end than the higher end because
Yeah.
to me, because like I realistically, you could say like he might be 64% from the field because the quality, the shot quality he's going to get is going to be nuts. But
Bro, yeah.
you look at his college stats and you're like, okay, if I'm conservative with it, I'd say like high 50s, and then with Pods, like same thing with him. But who knows? Pods might come in, might be comfortable right away, and shoot 44, 45% instead of 42. Like these are kind of rough estimates, but yeah, this is kind of like what I came up with. But yeah, like what do you guys kind of like what CJ said? You guys think like the playing next to CP will be something that will help elevate his game, and that's a good point. In training camp, if they do generate some degree of chemistry, he might CP's enough of a vocal leader and a person that will voice his thoughts on roster and lineups and second
Hmm.
units and whatnot. So
Hmm.
there is a possibility he may see more time than expected or less. Who knows?
Dre, I think one thing that people are going to bring up as the season goes on, because I've thought about this too, just from a play style perspective. I think he can. I'm confident in thinking that he could share the floor with Kuminga as well, because I think some fans
I
might
was going to
think
say that Lindell too.
I think he can legitimately share the floor with Kuminga, and here's why. Trayce shows a willingness to let go of the ball, and not just like get rid of it. We've seen his playmaking ability, and I don't think we've had a big this. I would say I wouldn't even say had a big, but like Jermichael Green wasn't hitting a cutting Kuminga. James Wiseman wasn't going to hit a cutting Kuminga.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like Looney was doing that, but Looney was on the floor for 26 minutes a game.
Point 5 basketball, right? Point 5.
Well, right. Like Trayce is hitting that guy. He's hitting the corner, bro. He's hitting. You saw in summer league that he's hitting Kuminga.
That's a great
where
that's
where he's going to the ball. We saw him make those corner passes multiple times, and we saw him hit cutters, and we saw him rolling off of the screen when somebody's got it at the elbow or the top of the key. So for fans that are thinking maybe like that could get in the way, I think if it's managed well, those dudes can not only share the floor, but share the floor at high efficiency, again, with guys like Sarge and guys like Chris Paul. Big time.
I remember
and
there was a play. The
let me
Warriors.
just add to that real quick, B. Lindell, yeah. So, like, I think, right, that's a very good point, right? Because I think the difference is, right, is that a lot we don't really have bigs. Looney can distribute, fairly well, but the big thing that TJD has over all of them is that he is actually able to distribute and make good decisions on the move, right?
Yeah, bro.
Man.
While
attacking the rim, which is not something that Looney's necessarily good at, or obviously Jermichael Green, right? So that element of being able to do that on the move, and Draymond used to be good at it a few years ago. Now that's not so much the case. I mean, still good, but
if you can audible in motion like he can, again, you're going downhill. I've got guys running with me. I've got the option for this to be a layup or a dunk, but can I hit the guy in the corner? Can I hit the guy who's a stride and a half ahead of me that has a better angle at the ball? We saw it in college. We didn't see it as much because it was very much, I think, slowed down in many aspects in summer league. But I've watched enough of his college stuff to know that this dude can be on the other side of half court and cross half court and make a play. So,
and because the important thing to me, right, about like being able to do that on the move is when you're on the move, that's what attracts defenders towards you. That's what pulls the defense towards you and opens up those lanes. Whereas if you're
them to make a decision earlier, because like even if you watch tape on Trayce, right, he's not pulling up for three. But if he's got momentum, it means you have to commit to
exactly. Yep.
To am I gonna drop? Am I going to close the gap on this dude and pick this dude up to make that pass more difficult? You have to make a decision. And a big who can force the defense to make a decision sooner in the shot clock is extremely valuable. So to me, this is really going to come down to how quickly does he pick up those defensive schemes? How quickly does he pick up even like just run the sheer running around when to move, how to move, and who to move to, who to move away from, that kind of stuff. I think that's the only thing that's gonna even like mitigate his minutes. But if he can latch on to the basics of that, right? I'm not sure what else can keep him off the floor. I just don't, because the things that he's good at, like James Wiseman is going to catch the most unnecessary strays this year, because the things that he's good at now are the things that we were begging James Wiseman to do when he was here.
That's
Like
exactly
begging.
right.
Yep.
Yes.
The strays that this man's going to catch are going to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, this man's going to be long gone, and Trayce
Oh,
is
boy.
going to not be jumping at every pump fake. He's going to be rotating on defense, and when he gets the ball in his hands in the paint, there's still a chance that he might pass the ball. Like we're going to be the strays are going to be ridiculous, but he's just good at those things now. So again, I'm hoping that he can latch on to the basics, like the tough stuff, like the 101 stuff with Kerr. And if he can do that, I don't think there's much else that can keep him off the floor. I just don't.
Yeah, like I was saying before, I remember the Warriors had this play. I remember one time I was watching the Warriors play. It was like a Steph Draymond pick and roll. Steph dumps it off Draymond. Draymond has a big in the paint, and then I think like Wiggins comes from like the corner on a lob. I was thinking about that when you were saying that about him being able to play make in space. I'm like, yo, Chris Paul and him coming off of a pick and roll to go to Chris Paul. There's a big in the paint. And he just throws up a lob to fucking Kuminga.
Bro, do you remember the play that I missed? Because if you remember that game, I didn't show up until probably like the second quarter. The very first play, and people were like, "Yo, where's Lindell?"
Yeah, wraparound pass.
And they're like, "Bro, the very first play he made was like he was under the basket, and I think he might have given a pump fake because I saw the replay, and he with his left arm, he swung the pass around two people on a dot, like on a string to the corner, and I was like, no freaking way, this dude was the first. This was the first assist he got.
And then on the next possession, he got like a rotation block.
Rotation block. I was like, don't do this to me. I'm already too excited, bro. I can't. They're gonna be roasting me on the timeline 4 months from now when he strings together 2 bad games in a row. People aren't gonna be able to get out of my mentions. But let me stop.
We got TJD.
Let me stop. Nobody's gonna be in my mentions. This is where like I really value where I'm at right now, because they're just gonna get on Dre. they're gonna pretend like Dre's the only person that ever liked Trayce, and they're gonna be in his mentions all year.
Dre, you told me this dude was gonna be an all-star.
Well, you saw how it was, like how people were talking about Dante during the playoffs.
Yeah,
you saw how it is. But no, I'm excited about dude. He's good now at the things that we were hoping Wiseman could like pick up. He's just good at them right now. So
I mean, I remember like people were profiling Wiseman as a, rim running big, a lob threat, a guy that can, rebound the ball, run the floor, block a couple shots. You know what I'm saying? And that's like backup big stuff. That's like the skill set of a guy that, understands where to be.
That's DeAndre Ayton's skill set.
If your expectation for him, and this is where I had to catch myself because I'm still rooting for him, but where I had to catch myself was, okay, and again, understanding the context of injury, understanding the context of Steve Kerr, understanding all of that stuff, right? Doesn't matter what agenda you're trying to push. When my expectation of him is essentially like prime JaVale McGee, he isn't giving you what the second overall pick ought to give you. He's just not. So I do feel kind of bad for him because he's going to catch a shit ton of strays, because what's going to jump off the screen with Trayce is literally all of the things that, like, bro, forget being able to use his right hand. If this man was 6'10", 6'11", he would have gone like 12, 13, 14.
Absolutely.
This motherfucker gonna be running full court, down court. Forget
having a right hand, bro. We just watched a dude who struggles attacking with his left hand get paid $55 million a year. Like, we just watched that happen. Like, if this dude could use both hands, he would have gone close to top 10. Same with like if he was just even a little bit taller. That age to size combo is crazy, and this is why I said, like, for what the Warriors need in the short term, combined with how I think he can develop over the next 2 years, Because again, in 4 years, he's still only going to be 27 years old,
27.
and I think he's going to. I think his development is already like here's like the thing. 23 is like old, quote unquote. But if you think about it, he's been developing very real, tangible warrior NBA skills for the last 3 years. It's not like he's starting his development now. You watch James Wiseman, and as a James Wiseman fan, even I said this is like his development truly starts his rookie year. With Trayce, that's not the case.
Another
And
thing
you can see that.
is so Phoenix DeAndre Ayton was widely known as the wrong pick at number 1. He still is.
Yeah,
But
he's still
not a great player. Some called him a bust. Then CP gets there, and DeAndre Ayton is Phoenix's third best player in the finals.
CP3 probably looking around at this man was in Washington, bro, for like 10 minutes. We're like, damn, this man got to the Warriors and was like, Kuminga and Trayce Jackson Davis. Hey, listen, my boy Sarge is there, Wiggins is there. I think he'll be okay. But yeah, bruh, this is it's gonna be fun. This is gonna be fun. We're not perfect. We're not even close to perfect.
This is probably the lighter because they haven't played in the NBA yet, so the expectations are like they're not really that high, and they shouldn't be because we don't need them to win a title per se. Like
correct.
If they can give us something, kind of like Mike Dunleavy kind of said this, like we're not expecting anything from them, but if they give us something, great. Like that's great.
Dre, that's my stock response to like the troll, because what's going to happen is people are going to, even within the fan. I'm so annoyed by this already.
Yeah, they're doing it with
fan base, people are within the fan base who might even be in here right now on burners, but when this gets put on YouTube or when this gets put on the timeline, people are going to listen. People are going to know what we're saying. People are going to know why and that we're excited about these guys, specifically Trayce, in his potential to impact this year. So what's going to happen is he's going to have a bad game, or he's going to have 2 bad games in a row, or he's going to get a DMP. Like that's good. I don't know why the people are going to pretend like that's a shock. He got picked 57th overall, regardless of who he turned down or whatever. He got picked 57th overall. He's going to get DMP'd at some point. It's going to happen. Okay. And people are going to troll. And my thing is, if we are relying on either one of these dudes as a championship contender, like we're not a championship contender. If we are counting on these dudes,
that's correct.
Then we're not a championship contender. And I've been saying that for a while. And it's going to be funny, and it's kind of annoying that people are going to be like trolling this group for how we see these guys, like the expectations that we're putting on these guys, because ultimately, if we're even Trayce, who I think is more likely to contribute this year, if we're relying on Trayce to be the primary backup big behind Kevin Looney, unless he shows me something by January that's just like mind blowing. Like if we're relying on him, we're not a championship team, and that's just that's all there is to that.
Draymond's
he's
not
just
doing
not
his job. It means Draymond's not doing his job. It means our point of attack is
and it's more likely that Dre does his job than it is. And this is not a crazy take.
Right.
It is more likely that Dre comes in locked in than it is that Trayce is forcing Kerr to take minutes away from Draymond Green.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I think that point is important, right? When we're talking about
another
projecting
thing too
PJD's minutes.
There was like a week time period in the offseason where a lot of fans went at McGee and Biyombo. The reason why I didn't want them is because we had TJD. Like that's one reason why I didn't want them. Because if we did get them, it would have taken playing time away from TJD, and to me that's a problem.
Yeah, it is.
And
I still hope that there is a free agent.
Can you hear me, by the way?
Out there that we can sign.
I don't think so. Drop down and come back up, Sun God.
Yeah, I think Sun God. I think you disappeared for a sec. Your guy hear you, but yeah, just come back up. Go ahead, Lindell.
No, you're good. I'm hoping that there's a free agent. Are we at 14 right now? Are we using
13?
So we're gonna. They've said they're gonna leave 15 open.
Right.
Yeah.
We got one left.
Yeah, so we got one left, and we already signed Lester is a two-way, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
That was, bro. That got announced. I'm not gonna lie. I was way more excited than I should have been for that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm like,
Because I watched him play last year, and I went into the summer league. Like I was excited about Trayce, but bro. When I tell you I was locked in on Lester, man,
yeah.
I think he might be an NBA player for real.
Bro, the defense is already there.
So the only thing that concerns me, and again, it's like if he could do these things, he wouldn't be a two-way player, right? But he is weak going over screens. That's my only serious criticism of him is like he struggles to fight through screens, but he's noticeably bigger and stronger than he was last season, so he clearly worked on it. He can score in a number of different ways. He's a legitimate 3-level scorer from the floater standpoint. We didn't see much of the mid range, but we know he can shoot the ball. But the defense,
I don't know if y'all see his Instagram story. I follow him on Instagram. I think he's over there in Puerto Rico. He's playing. I think they're playing for the Puerto Rican national team.
That's fire.
He's been playing pro-am.
He's playing. Yeah, man. If he's doing that, man,
this man at the point of attack is a pest. And he's stronger. Like, bro, that was a thing to me. Like, it's one thing to have a dude who can jack shots, but he was actually pretty darn efficient. So I'm like, okay, you can score in summer league. Fine, that's great. You can pull dude out of a bottom of a barrel who can score 18 in a summer league game.
Yep.
But to do it in a number of different ways, being able to go to both hands. The euro is there. The floater is there. The 3-point, the dribble pull up is there. The catch and shoot is there, right? To give me all of those things on top of being able to defend your position at the elite level. And you saw in those last 2 games, you saw they were matching him up against wings. And I was literally thinking, if y'all remember the playback, I was like, bro, if this man can guard wings at like an even rate, he's an NBA player. He's a legit NBA player. So
Jay Free's funny.
We'll see.
I was just gonna say, are we off of? I dropped down. Are we off of TJD?
No.
No, if you got a point to add your point, brother.
Yeah, go ahead.
Add your point, brother.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, as far as like the minutes go, right? Like of TJD, like him getting more minutes. It's one scenario is exactly what you guys said, right? Is that the Draymond minutes just aren't good enough, and that that TJD is contributing more than what was expected, so you're fine with cutting down on the Draymond minutes. Right. Or the case is that, the Draymond minutes are going so well that, you're basically able to, and if the Draymond minutes are going well, there's 2 scenarios, right? One is TJD, when he does come in, he's, increasing or keeping the lead, like his minutes are positive or the minutes are negative. And if the minutes are positive and Draymond's playing well as well, then I would expect to see his minutes go up. And if the case is that Draymond's playing well and the minutes are negative, then obviously, right, his minutes will go down. But if the case is that Draymond's playing negative and TJD's playing negative, then I don't expect to see a lot of TJD minutes just because, if they're both negatives, right? So it really does hinge a lot on Draymond and Looney minutes as far as how much playing time TJD will get. Just because, the point is, if you have a lead, right, you're going to be more comfortable with having TJD play more minutes,
right,
as opposed to chasing a lead. So Draymond is extremely pivotal to the development of TJD from that minute standpoint.
I'm with you, because I think he can share the floor with with a few different guys, specifically those bigs. Where it gets interesting though, and I think they'll wean him into this if we see it at all this year. And we said this late in summer league, if he can play the 4, it gets really interesting, because then in a weird way I kind of watch Moody's development, and this is my only, and this might be premature, I'm totally open to that too. If he can play the 4, I start to worry about Kuminga. And I wouldn't even say worry, but I think about that because we want Kuminga to be able to do 4 things, and I think Kerr does too. If Trayce can play the 4, and what I'm hoping is Kuminga will have uninterrupted backup wing minutes. GP2 makes it interesting, but the reason why GP2 makes it interesting is because I've heard absolutely nothing about Moody. So there's this weird like domino effect thing that could happen too, but I also don't expect him to you want to talk about be thrown into the fire. If Kerr plays him at 4 for any stretch of time, that's getting thrown into the fire because that's guarding hey, we need you to guard 3 positions in your rookie year. But
we need you to guard Giannis, Middleton, and Grayson Allen.
Yeah.
I think for that's a conundrum to me, right? Because I think Kuminga kind of holds the keys to that. Because right, if Kuminga's outside shot, because as of right now, right, his outside shot isn't reliable enough, so that's why I don't think he's necessarily a 3, like a good fit at the 3. And I think his best position is the small ball 4. So I think if Kuminga's outside shot is reliable enough, then I think a lineup of the same one that you listed out earlier, right? Of Chris Paul, Moody, Kuminga, TJD, and Sarge is possible. But I think if his outside shot doesn't progress as much, then I think then that TJD minutes really is it becomes minimized to me because then you'd kind of end up I'd expect to see a lineup more of Chris Paul and then Clay at the 2 and then Moody at the 3, Kuminga at the 4, Sarge as a small ball 5. So I think Kuminga's also a huge component here as to how many minutes and what role TJD will play.
No, I'm with you. It's unrelated, but that wing, that small ball 4 spot that's the one I've been focused on the most, I think, as far as not doubt, but it's the one I have I know the least about as far as our roster goes. So, but the cool thing is we've got options, and I think the assumption is that Kuminga does take some kind of leap. I hope it's in the right direction, because if that's the case, forget everything else. By the way, if Kuminga takes the leap, and I know we've said this before, if Kuminga takes the leap, that's the answer to 2 of the things people want in the offseason. We wanted that stretch 4-5. We wanted that. We wanted an additional wing player. If Kuminga takes a leap, he's that dude.
I pray to God that if he's able to have the ability to play deep into the 4th quarter, maybe not close games, but play deep into the 4th quarter, bro.
Yeah.
I think even outside of that, I think if he takes a leap, the amount of lineup versatility that offers the Warriors is ungodly.
Yes, absolutely.
I've said if he takes a leap, I really don't see how the fuck we don't win a title. Like I said this, if he takes a leap.
Bro, he provides elite rim pressure. And I know there's some concern near the top of the key in the wing, but the corner 3 is real. The corner 3 is real.
Yeah, he shot 37% from 3 post All-Star break.
Yeah, the corner 3 is real. There's a couple, and again, we said this a few weeks ago. If he's aggressive and timely in his involvement in rebounding, and he changed absolutely nothing else, he's a problem. He's a real problem.
Bruce and Shadow, how we doing, guys?
Yeah, man. What it do with the business?
I'm a bounce. Thanks for having me up.
Yes, sir, son. God.
Yeah, take it easy, bro.
Appreciate your insight.
Take it easy, brother.
Yeah, I'm feeling
What's good,
man.
guys? What we on?
Shadow, what's going on?
We're just outlining the expectations for Pods and TJD next year. I know we don't talk about them a lot because they're rookies and they're at the end of the roster, but they got signed to roster contracts. I mean, they're going to be on the 15-man roster. So, but we're starting with them, and then as the days go on, I'm going to up the ante, and we're going to talk about the vets and the role players and whatever. But today, I just wanted to talk about they will bring to the table and what their strengths and weaknesses are, expectations,
Oh,
things.
nice.
Yeah,
Well, I think for Steve Kerr, what those guys will be and only be at this particular juncture is minute stealers. Um,
Yeah.
when Steph needs a breather, and on top of it, minute stealers, as we saw, like good or bad, they get minutes. Like, you know what I mean? Brad Wanamaker, Chioza, like these guys were minute stealers, but they still got minutes. They still got opportunities. You understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
with that being said, like the only way they get better and they get into the rotation is by playing minutes. And I think that those guys are basically on the same trajectory as everybody else. It's probably going to take them 2 to 3 years to even get to where they're like really helping out. Like Moody had some flashes, you know what I mean? Kaminga had some flashes. So in year two, but right now I think it's just time for them to just get in the regular season. They're gonna have their games where they're gonna get their shine, as you know, quote unquote, the baby dubs, and then they're gonna get their opportunity. Like I could possibly see TJD playing 10 minutes a game. I could see Pod playing 13, 14 minutes a game. You understand what I'm saying? So I think I think they're both going to be good, both going to be solid. I think their trajectory in 2 3 years, which that's all Warriors. Like you know, you think of Jordan Poole, it was year three that he really took that leap. The other years he was just either in the G League or playing because Clay was hurt, so he was playing and it didn't look that good. But the more minutes he got, the better it looked. You know, same thing with Kaminga. And I
Yeah,
heard, but not to because today's not about Kaminga, but to tap in what you guys are saying about Kaminga, it's up to Kaminga, man. Like all he
Yeah.
got to do is rebound. Like the leap,
Bro,
I'm assuring you guys, he's
I'm
already
telling
taken
you.
the leap. He's already taken the leap. That leap you guys are talking about, it's Jordan Poole like. He's already
Bruh.
taken it. But the problem is, Kerr
mm,
will not play that man if he's gonna be getting 3 rebounds, 2 rebounds, 4 rebounds.
Mm.
He's got to get 6+ rebounds a
Yep.
game, or he's
Yep.
not seeing the court.
Yeah.
If he does that, Kaminga's gonna be. It's gonna look like. It's gonna look pretty spooky, bro. It's gonna look like.
Yeah.
It's gonna
Yeah.
look crazy out there.
Yeah.
yeah. Shadow brought up the projection thing for TJD and Pods. Yeah, I think in like 3 years they'll both be Swiss Army knife players, and they'll both be really impactful for us.
I'm excited for him.
Do you
I
guys have
really am.
any last thoughts on these two players? Or,
Yeah, I think TJD has the opportunity to kind of come in like a Jordan Bell, where certain things that they tried last year just didn't work. So you know that this year they'll be more uh, precise in the strategies and the approach and the rotations. So he may get anywhere from I said maybe about 14, 15 minutes like Jordan Bell did. And I think ultimately him being a 4 year senior, he shouldn't make too many errors or issues in that regard. So whether Draymond or Loon or whoever's a negative, and they're going to buy minutes here and there and rest guys. So I think he'll get a lot of opportunity. Me personally, I think Pods, to me personally, is better than a Wanamaker, a Chioza, or what I mean, a Ty Jerome. So he probably doesn't have that stroke in itself, like as far as being comfortable. But I think he'll be more comfortable as the season goes on, as he gets more gravity. You feel me? So I think they'll be good, and I think they'll be a bet. They should be better than what we've seen on the come off the bench in times past.
No, I'm with you.
Um,
100%, hundred
my
percent.
my, my thing with the two things the things I want to look out for in terms of Pods this year, look out for what he does is let's see how that shooting is. Let's see if it's legitimately an issue against length and athleticism, greater length and athleticism, and let's see how his playmaking is against NBA level athletes, and if it's better with better players on his team, or if it's harder for him to make the right pass and find the open lanes against NBA athletes.
Yeah, man. No, I agree. I think even though they have weaknesses that we noted, I think ultimately it comes down to their strengths being um, you know, perfect for the system, and things that they can, already do at an NBA level. Like I already said, I said it during summer league on the record. Like I view Pods as an NBA level playmaker. I view TJD as an NBA level defender. Like these guys, from what I've seen, and I obviously, obviously they haven't played in the NBA yet technically, but from what I've seen, their skill set translates. It projects that even as rookies, they'll be able to hold their own, at least with what they do best. And shooting wise, I think Pods will figure that out. He's a natural shooter, and shooters shoot. So being around Stephen Clay is gonna be great to build his confidence. And with TJD, I think being around Loon and Draymond, and by the way, with Pods, same thing about with being around Chris Paul as well. From a playmaking standpoint, you got a little bit
Yeah.
of everything. You got the playmaking chops that you can kind of, pick Chris Paul's brain with. You got the shooting, secrets and techniques that Stephen Clay can pass down. And then
Yeah.
with TJD, you got Loon. Loon can, help him with the rebounding, positioning, using his body, boxing out, those little
Right.
things. And then Draymond can kind of pass down the playmaking stuff at the front court position. You know, running the floor, making quick decisions defensively, like cat and mouse game, how to improve on and refine and iron those things out. Like
Yeah.
I just think we talk about Moody and Kuminga being drafted to good situations a couple of years ago, but their skill sets, were not necessarily complementary of what our system demands. I
Right.
think because in a way, not that they aren't capable of it, but we have to kind of mold them into the Warriors' way. Whereas Pods and TJD, while they do have weaknesses, that we noted, like their strengths are
Dre,
immediately,
this
yeah,
dude didn't know anybody on the floor and hadn't played a game yet. And he
yeah,
stood up and was yelling at people to get a rebound.
yes, yep, leadership qualities. And
I'm in, bro. I'm
you
in.
saw Pods, those sound bites. He was mic'd up and he's kind of directing guys on defense, telling them where to be. That he has their back on the rotation. Like
Yeah.
Pods and TJD, I think, like you said, like one of the most surprising things was how vocal they were
Right.
on the court. So yeah, I mean, again, we're spending a lot of time talking about them, but ultimately, we shouldn't expect too much, right? Obviously, but there is a range, right? The range is, they contribute little to nothing, which is okay because at the end of the day, they don't determine, our fate
Right.
this season. And on the more optimistic end, like they may be rotation pieces throughout the season. I don't know about
Right.
the playoffs. I just think that there's too much talent there that they'd
Yep.
have to, but on the more optimistic side of things, like who knows, maybe TJD is a backup big for us. Like he may play his way into that role. So I'm pretty content with these picks. Yeah, what were you gonna say?
One thing with Paz that really stood out to me, he's a team player, right? He'll play within the flow of the offense. He wants others to get going. Like Steph sometimes, like he'll force feed Clay. Like Paz will do the same thing. He will try and force feed players, maybe a little bit too much. Maybe he'll pass a little bit too much and be over passive. But he's a team first player. He plays within the system, plays within the flow of the game, and he doesn't. He doesn't like Jordan Poole. Like he would just dominate possessions with the ball, and sometimes he would take 2-3 shots in a row. Paz, you won't ever really see him do that, and I think that's a really good quality to have, especially in our system.
100% agree.
Yeah.
So I'll close this out here, but do you want me to say who I'm going to do tomorrow, or should I keep it like a surprise?
Yeah, give people a preview.
Yeah, tomorrow I'm going to do Saric and Corey Joseph. So the two free agents that we
Nice.
signed.
Yeah.
So we'll do Saric and Kojo, the two free agents we signed, and I think that'll be more. There'll be some more reference there because they played in the NBA, so we have more things to kind of point at. Like Kojo,
Right,
I
yeah.
know he has the Raptors connection, the Canadian connection. So Shadow can kind of speak on that. And he had, played with Spurs under Popovich, and Saric, understanding that he played with CP, and he's a vet. He's been around. So I think the best thing now is to kind of shift to the free agents that we signed, and then after that, we'll get into the the nuts and bolts of the key contributors. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah, man. But I appreciate everybody for coming through. This was actually a pretty successful. Uh, the reason I made it so formal is because I want this to be on YouTube, so it is a little bit more formal. But at the end of the day, we're just shooting the shit, talking about the same things we always do. And I appreciate everybody for coming through, and hopefully we were able to kind of expand the breadth of your knowledge on these few guys, and we're going to continue doing this. Like the next week or two, I'm going to continue outlining each player and kind of their expectations next year, what they need to work on, for Clay, for Steph, for Draymond, for Loon, all of them. So this is just a good little exercise to kind of prepare for the season, and then September training camp, and then before you know it, the season starts. So like I said, appreciate everybody, and I'll be back tomorrow. I don't know if Urkel's going to plan on doing anything, but if he does, I'll be there, and everybody come through for that as well. So like I said, man, peace out.
Take it easy, you guys.